Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. With Mercedes and Red Bull both already, it seems, approaching the budget cap for development for 2022. Lewis Hamilton also very frustrated at what he sees as the fact that Mercedes have made zero progress at all since the season's inception. Very much enjoying your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into today, we'll get past this rather quickly indeed. This also to mention real quick for all the talk about, from F1 about sustainability and the like. Look at all these private jets flying off from the Miami Grand Prix after this past weekend. Classic stuff, no real surprises, but just is what it is at the end of the day. This also got to mention though, because there's been some talk lately about Williams, the fact that Albon has now a couple of times got this car into the points. You could argue he's got somewhat fortunate with Alonso and other cars ahead of him, crashing out, DNFing, stuff like this, but he's played his cards right and drove the absolute wheels off the Williams. Of course, at the same time, you do have to wonder, Latifi's basically at the back of the grid as per usual, but is it so much the fact that Albon just driving out of his skin, or is this car actually kind of competitive this year, but Latifi's like, not giving it the service it deserves, I suppose. And then there's been a question, right, for Williams to consider, because F1 kind of knows or theorizes that Latifi probably isn't going to be in the seat next year, but possibly he could be out of a seat sooner than just that. As well, Joe Soward points out in the kind of green notebook from Route 66, a number of interesting topics in this. I'll kind of dive into some of them on a kind of a surface level. Firstly, the Porsche Red Bull deal we believe might come into effect from 2025-2026. The rumor has it that effectively they're going to rebrand the Red Bull powertrain engine side of things to just Porsche. So that's probably going to happen within a few years. But there's also speculation that there'll be some kind of long-term option for Porsche to take over the entire team if Red Bull decides to do that, or if it decides that it's done in Formula 1. Of course, for now, you'd imagine that's not going to happen. Red Bull will more than likely get an awful lot of exposure from the current state of Formula 1, but if they do decide to move on, Porsche may well just have that team full-time. That at least is what is considered to potentially be coming into the contract. This also, in terms of, future races, apparently a Colombian race might be on the horizon, a Caribbean Grand Prix, they reckon, a race that could move around the region over time if other projects can come to fruition. I'm pretty sure Hamilton's also said that he wants to race in Africa, somewhere at least in Africa, maybe South Africa is an option, as we've seen over the last few weeks. But apparently a Colombian Grand Prix could be on the cards. This another couple of things, of course, on the other side of the VW deal with Porsche to Red Bull is Audi trying to find a, appropriate company to buy effectively. There's been some talk about Aston Martin. Apparently Lawrence Stroll and the guys want to sell to Audi, kind of to say, okay, look, we turn this team around, this company around, from being in kind of dire straits to selling it on to, a bigger, course, player. But apparently Audi want to get involved with Sauber. There's a few reasons why that Joe explains right here, but apparently Audi Sauber might be the relationship that goes, and of course Sauber looking very good lately. The Alfa Romeo outfit as they are at the present time, they've been certainly on the up the last few races, and this is kind of the main thing I wanted to mention here on Latifi, because the rumour has it that he might be out of a seat mid-season, because I'm pretty sure the money that he brings in for the sponsorship side, effectively pay driver, all this type of stuff, it's probably not required anymore by Williams. I think in terms of from a financial perspective, they're somewhat, in a decent position at the moment. So there's rumours kicking around the paddock. One suggested that Williams is looking to change drivers for the second part of the year, as Latifi has not done a good enough job. That's pretty indisputable, but the first part is of course the question. Things are complicated by money though that the Canadian brings, and by contracts, but if it happens, expect Nick de Vries to take the drive. Currently in Formula E for Mercedes, kind of makes sense he might get a seat like this. Of course, there has been some talk about Oscar Piastri, where he goes. The rumours have it lately that maybe Alonso will end up on Aston Martin. Vettel's kind of in no man's land, but Vettel was even a couple of days ago offered a seat in IndyCar, so that was a kind of a strange one. But and then potentially Piastri steps into that Alpine seat, right? So some question marks going down, but apparently de Vries could be the option here, even though some have certainly questioned whether that's a good idea or not. But apparently Latifi could be booted out before the season is even over. So I guess we'll stay tuned on that one, because of course, muddied by contracts and the like. But Latifi might not be there for the remainder of this year. So we'll see how that one goes. Let's talk about the kind of Hamilton Mercedes stuff though, because of course this past weekend it started off so promising for them. They were of course leading the practice sessions on Friday. The car seemed to be in a great spot. Then when the kind of conditions changed a little bit, the wind changed, the track was in a slightly different spot, the car just fell out of the window, as they like to describe it as, and all of a sudden it was, pretty terrible for the rest of the weekend, to be honest. I thought it did look somewhat better, but just, at least in terms of its poise, and it looked all right on the track in fairness, and so they got the result they were kind of looking for, 5th and 6th, but still way off the pace of the leaders, Verstappen especially in the Red Bull, and even Charles Leclerc. And actually, if you look at the numbers purely on statistics, their kind of pace has got worse to the leaders every single race this year, and that's as kind of Hamilton says, unfortunately not, we're the same speed as we were in the first race, and just haven't improved in these 5 races, but I'm hopeful at some stage we will. They know there's potential in this car, they saw it on the Friday, but unlocking that on a more regular basis is, it's going to prove a huge challenge, and if they can't do it in Barcelona, it may be game over effectively, because apparently they've spent a fair bit of their budget already this season in terms of development, and if what they've spent on development so far doesn't work out, it might be all over for them. So as Hamilton kind of says right now, unfortunately not with the same speed as we were, we've got to keep working hard. It wasn't as bad today on the Sunday, he says, from race to race, track to track, surface to surface, how high, the kind of ride height of the car car is, we can make the car higher and reduce the porpoising. So today wasn't really bad, just not particularly as fast, right? So definitely some concerns here. And if we look at the numbers, this was actually from 15 days ago after the first 4 Grand Prix. But as you can see, from Bahrain, the deficit from the Mercedes to the leaders, they weren't too bad in Bahrain, about 0.7 seconds per lap. In Saudi Arabia, it went to just under a second. Australia was slightly worse. Of course, it's tough to kind of quantify this just because you've got different stints of the race, and sometimes it's different drivers at play and they're carrying issues. It's like it doesn't always paint a great picture. But as you can see, pretty much every race so far this year, the Mercedes has become less competitive as time has gone on to the leader. Now, part of that, of course, is the Red Bull getting better, as it certainly has. If the Red Bull hadn't changed at all, or the Ferrari hadn't changed at all, and maybe even there, they've only made some small tweaks in terms of power and stuff like that, more to come from them in Barcelona, as we looked at yesterday. But even if it wasn't for that, Mercedes really haven't made any progress at all. And this was the past weekend. If we compare Verstappen's average time of a 1:33.2 to Hamilton's at a 1:34.4, you've pretty much got a 1.2 second gap there. And even we can see at the end of the race, with Russell on these kind of faster, younger, medium tyres, he still wasn't able to put in the laps that Verstappen and Leclerc were doing on relatively old hards. So it really doesn't paint a great picture for the Mercedes. Of course, they probably had to realise going into the race on Sunday that, okay, look, we're probably not going to be able to do anything against the Red Bulls and the Ferraris. Let's just go with a very conservative setup that we know is going to be okay and not porpoise too much, and we should be okay for 5th and 6th and just lock up those points rather than push the boat out to try and get a faster car in the corners. And maybe if the flooring and the new aerodynamics they do introduce in Barcelona can fix that, then they might be much more competitive, right? I'd certainly love to see them get up there at the front again. It'd be a fantastic season if that's possible, but it seems maybe relatively unlikely at the moment, just on the way the last few weeks have gone. And of course, other teams are also bringing upgrades. It's not just Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes that are trying to make something happen. And as Otmar says from the Alpine side, there are pieces for Spain, which is the 6th race, and then pieces further for Baku 2 races later, and for the 10th race in Silverstone, a constant flow of evolutions. I hope that Alpine is strong in Barcelona. It is a circuit that is going well for us. Many people say that if you're strong in Barcelona, you will be in most places. So we shall see. Of course, I think Mercedes' plan here really is to see, okay, look, they saw what their initial car did, their kind of previous model without the no side pod design when the pre-season testing kicked off in Barcelona. They know what it was like at that track with the other model, so they can test out this model there in the practice and see how it goes. Of course, it will still a lot to learn for Mercedes, and we're already 5 races into the season, and effectively the championship, both championships for them are probably already long gone. Let's talk about the Ferrari Red Bull side of things though, because so far Red Bull have 3 race victories, Ferrari have 2, Ferrari lead the way, but of course Red Bull are catching up very quickly indeed, and if they don't take steps in the right direction, they are going to significantly fall behind the pace. Now, as we saw a couple of days ago, Binotto's like, look, they've made some upgrades, the Red Bull guys, they're spending a lot of money, like at some stage they're going to have to stop developing, like we're going to be able to keep our developments going for a longer part of the season due to the budget cap that is in place at the moment, and okay, they've gained a couple of tenths, but we're going to try and gain it back. I'm pretty sure they said yesterday, we looked at yesterday, the rumour has it that the upgrades they're going to try and bring through for Barcelona might unlock 2 or 3 tenths, which could well be enough to put them on par, if not ahead of the Red Bull once again. Now, this also is rather interesting, right? Because apparently, according to data gathered by motorsport.com, the development budget is $10 million, and Red Bull has already spent 2/3 of it. This, might align rather well with what we've seen so far this season. Of course, part of that development budget expenditure is not just on manufacturing the parts, but also on the actual research and development, right? Actually paying the people to do the research. And of course, there's going to be a lag time from that to actually producing the parts. So just because they've spent 2/3 doesn't mean that 2/3 of their actual parts have been created already. It's more like, potentially they've spent 2/3 of the money that they can do, and therefore the parts will get rolled out over the coming, days, weeks, and months, all this type of stuff. Apparently, Mercedes have also in a similar boat, right, which kind of makes sense of what they've done so far. But that's kind of the thing. If both of these teams, Red Bull and Mercedes, are already kind of getting up there to the budget cap for development, then if Mercedes upgrades don't work, what are they going to do for the rest of the year, right? If they can't make things work in Barcelona, they might be in a very difficult spot indeed. And Ferrari, apparently as of yet, of course, this data could be wrong or inaccurate or misleading to some degree, but they don't seem to be quite as close, right? So they, of course, have more time to spread their developments over, but of course, they've also got to hope they work, because if they don't work, Red Bull are going to win the championship. That's just how it is, at least where the cars are sitting at the present time. And it's not like Red Bull are going to slow down either. As Helmut Marko points out, we start there with new parts in Spain. So most teams are trying to bring some new parts to Spain. Rumour has it that Aston Martin are pretty much bringing so many new upgrades, it's going to look like a different car. Maybe not look like a different car, but potentially behave like a very different car indeed. We know that that's where Mercedes are trying to bring the bulk of their upgrades in. We saw that Ferrari kind of saved their rear wing and potential changes to their flooring and aerodynamics and stuff for the upgrades they want to bring to Spain. So most teams are probably going to bring something or other. Red Bull, of course, brought their initial upgrades through for Imola, which made some degree of difference, but apparently they're also bringing some new parts as well, with which they can finally reach their optimum weight. So I'm pretty sure Red Bull are rather happy, you would imagine, with how their car is aerodynamically. I think that they said they were confident they could lose like at least 10 kilos. I think they lost a few kilos to Imola, and they reckon they can lose a few more. Another few kilos lost should mean another, couple of tenths shaved off their potential lap time if they can get down to the 798 kilograms, which is the required minimum weight. So that is probably probably what the Red Bull guys are focusing on. Just, okay, the car is great, let's just make sure it can actually, well, first of all, be reliable, but also get down to the minimum weight it possibly can be. And other teams are also working on, well, a similar boat, I suppose. But, this also from Ferrari, just to mention real quick, because we did talk about the fact that their kind of second power unit was going to have a significant power upgrade, but apparently they weren't really able to bring that in for PU2, and some of the upgrades and some of the developments on the engine front will have to come in for the third power unit due to the early introduction with which they introduced it, which Mercedes engineers reckon that because they're pretty much going to have to wait to bring this new hybrid system in for the third power unit. Of course, the team's only allowed, technically, 3 engines or 3 power units for the entire season, that probably they will have to take an additional engine, which isn't really a massive surprise, right? Because keeping these engines on top form and actually only using 3 the entire season is very tough to do. Of course, we saw Mercedes took a couple of engine penalties last year, didn't really seem to affect them that much. So early indications that probably Ferrari will at some point or another in the year have to take at least 1 engine penalty, which of course is never an ideal world, to be honest, given, well, where Red Bull seem to sit at the present time, even though their engines also seem to quite like exploding. We'll see if any more of that happens going forwards. A couple of things here to finish out. Thought this was interesting, actually. The last, well, several races in a row, the pole sitter has won the race, at least from a team perspective. Of course, the Brazilian Grand Prix pole sitter was Valtteri Bottas after the sprint. Hamilton won the race, and since then, well, every single team that was on pole has actually won the race. Last race was the first time that's been different in quite some time, with Ferrari on pole, of course, with Charles Leclerc, and Red Bull and Max Verstappen coming through to win the entire thing. And just to mention this as well, I don't really want to comment on these too much, because every single week the power rankings come through, I'm like, what are they really thinking here? Like, I don't really know how Russell's so far behind Hamilton. I don't really know why Albon has a 9.0, but Esteban Ocon go from 20th to 8th, only has a 7.6. But you guys can maybe dissect that one in the comments. Very much enjoying your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.